The late afternoon sun sank low, tinting the narrow streets of the small town with warm shades of amber and rust. Susan hitched up the strap of her faded handbag, juggling two grocery bags that strained her tired hands. Her steps quickened as she turned onto her block. Zuri would soon start wondering why dinner wasn't ready. Susan's days were built on quiet endurance. Every coin she earned had its destination, every hour stretched beyond its limit. Between double shifts at the diner and her evening cleaning jobs, exhaustion had etched itself into her bones. Still, she never allowed her daughter to see the weight she carried. Zuri deserved a mother who laughed, who made their cramped apartment feel safe despite the peeling wallpaper and second-hand furniture. At 28, Susan had learned resilience by necessity. The cracks on her hands told stories of soap, bleach, and endless scrubbing. Her hair, once styled with care, was now tied into a practical bun each morning. Yet there was something quietly radiant about her, the kind of beauty born from perseverance rather than polish, the kind she never noticed, though others sometimes did. It was on one such evening, when the scent of approaching rain lingered in the air, that she first noticed him. He sat on the curb outside the bakery, head bowed beneath a hood, his clothes worn, his shoes nearly threadbare. To any passerby, he was just another homeless man keeping to himself. But behind the scruff and shadows sat Joel Talley, founder of one of the most powerful tech empires in the country. Once a billionaire surrounded by boardrooms and cameras, Joel had walked away from it all, suffocating beneath the weight of pretense. For months, he wandered from city to city, seeking what he had long lost: truth, simplicity, a life untouched by greed. When Susan walked past, he lifted his gaze. Their eyes met hers, weary but kind, his sharp even beneath fatigue. Most people avoided looking at him, she didn't. Something about the emptiness in his expression stopped her. She hesitated, torn between practicality and compassion. She barely had enough for her own child. What sense did it make to offer help to a stranger? And yet, there was something in his face that felt human. She sighed, setting down one of her bags. "Are you hungry?" she asked. Joel blinked, surprised by her softness. "I could be," he said quietly. Susan unwrapped a small sandwich meant for Zuri's snack and handed it to him. "It's not much, but it's something." Before he could respond, a small voice piped up beside her. "Mommy, why is he sitting in the rain?" Zuri's wide brown eyes studied Joel without fear. Her curls bounced as she tilted her head. "He just doesn't have a place to stay, sweetheart," Susan said gently. Zuri frowned, then smiled at Joel. "Hi. I'm Zuri. You don't look scary, you look nice." Joel's throat tightened. It had been years since anyone had spoken to him without expectation or suspicion. "Hello, Zuri," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Susan's instincts urged caution. Life as a single mother had made her wary, but Joel didn't seem threatening. There was humility in the way he held himself, a brokenness that made her chest ache. "You can't sit here all night," she muttered. After a beat, she added, "Come on. You can walk with us carrying one of these bags if you want to earn that sandwich." Joel hesitated, then rose slowly, accepting the offer with quiet gratitude. They walked in silence until they reached Susan's building, a narrow structure with peeling paint and squeaky steps. "You can wait here while I make dinner," she said, unlocking the door. Joel nodded. "I'd like that." Inside, Susan busied herself unloading groceries, wondering what on earth she was doing. Inviting a stranger, even one who looked lost rather than dangerous, wasn't something she'd ever done. Yet when she glanced out the window and saw him sitting quietly beneath the flickering porch light, something inside her softened. "Mommy," Zuri whispered, peering through the curtain. "He looks less sad now." Susan smiled faintly. Outside, Joel sat with the blanket Susan eventually brought him, the drizzle pattering softly on his hood. The warmth he felt wasn't from food or shelter, it was from kindness. Real, uncalculated kindness. Later that evening, Susan opened the door again. "Here," she said, handing him a folded blanket. Joel took it gently. You have no idea what this means. Susan crossed her arms. Don't thank me too much. I'm just doing what I'd hope someone would do for me. He watched her retreat inside, marveling at her strength. He wanted to tell her the truth that he wasn't really homeless, that he could change her life in an instant, but instead he said, "My name's Eli." Susan raised an eyebrow. Eli? All right, Eli. That night, as the rain thickened, Joel sat listening through the walls to Zuri's laughter and Susan's soft voice. He hadn't realized until then how much he'd missed the sound of warmth. The next morning, when Susan stepped outside for work, she found him still on the steps, wrapped in the blanket, asleep. His face, softened in rest, looked younger. When he stirred, she said quietly, "You're still here." "You said I could wait," he replied. "I didn't mean forever," she said dryly. "I'll earn my keep if you'll let me." Something in his tone disarmed her. She sighed. "Fine. Help me carry these in." From that day on, Joel became part of their daily rhythm. He fixed things around the apartment, ran errands, and made Zuri laugh. The child adored him, calling him Uncle Eli. Susan tried to remain cautious, but he made it difficult. He was thoughtful, patient, and good. Too good. One evening, she came home from work to find Joel helping Zuri with her math homework. The sight tugged at something deep inside her. He fit there like he had always belonged. Later that night, after Zuri was asleep, they shared a quiet conversation that slipped into laughter. Joel spoke vividly of life, of lessons learned, of places he'd been. She began to notice little things, his eloquence, his mannerisms, the intelligence behind his eyes. He wasn't the man he pretended to be. But she didn't press him. That fragile peace shattered days later. A neighbor muttered a warning, "Be careful, Susan. You don't know where he's from." The seed of doubt settled in her chest. Then, one afternoon at the diner, her boss pointed to a glossy magazine. "Isn't that your friend?" she asked. Susan's heart froze. There, in polished perfection, was Joel clean-shaven, in a tuxedo, surrounded by CEOs. The caption read, "Joel Talley, billionaire visionary rumored to be taking a sabbatical." When she returned home, her voice trembled. "You're not who you said you were." Joel's eyes met hers, the lie finally unraveling. "I'm Joel Talley," he said softly. "But I never meant to deceive you. I just needed to be seen as a person again." Susan's tears came hot and bitter. "I fed you when I could barely feed my child. You let me believe you had nothing. I needed to know it wasn't about money," he pleaded. "Everything I felt for you was real." She shook her head. "You watched me struggle while you sat on a fortune. That's not love, that's cruelty." She turned away, shutting the door on him and everything he represented. In the days that followed, Joel returned briefly to his world of wealth, but nothing felt the same. The applause, the admiration, it all rang hollow. Quietly, he arranged to pay off Susan's debts, ensuring she'd never know it came from him. Yet Zuri, in her innocent wisdom, saw through everything. "Mommy," she said one evening, "Uncle Eli didn't care about money. He cared about us." Those words lingered. The next morning, Susan found herself walking into the gleaming glass tower of Tally Tech. She felt entirely out of place, but she pressed on. "Tell him Susan is here," she said at the desk. Moments later, she was led into a vast office overlooking the city. Joel turned from the window, disbelief flooding his features. "I don't want your money," she began. "I just want the truth." He took a step closer. "The truth is I'd give it all up for you and Zuri. I'd trade every dollar to carry your groceries again." For the first time, Susan saw not the billionaire but the man she'd shared laughter and late-night worries with. "No more lies," she whispered. "No more lies," he promised. When she stepped into his arms, it wasn't a reunion of fairy tales, it was forgiveness made real. Weeks later, the world saw them together again, this time not on a curb or under rain, but in a ballroom glowing with light. Susan's ivory gown shimmered beneath the chandeliers, her hand resting in Joel's. Zuri twirled in lavender nearby, giggling with delight. When Joel raised his glass for a toast, his voice trembled slightly. I once believed wealth measured success. But Susan showed me the truth, real wealth is love freely given, kindness shared, and family chosen. The crowd applauded, but all Susan saw was him, the man who had lost everything to find what truly mattered. Later, as they danced beneath the golden light, Zuri spun circles around them, laughter ringing like bells. And in that moment, surrounded by love, Susan finally understood, true fortune was never written in numbers, but in hearts that had the courage to begin again. The ballroom glimmered with soft, golden light that seemed to hum with happiness. Every chandelier sparkled like a constellation, and every face reflected the kind of joy that couldn't be faked. Susan stood at the heart of it all, her hand intertwined with Joel's, her engagement ring catching the glow like a quiet promise fulfilled. For a woman who once measured every dollar and rationed hope like sugar, the moment felt almost unreal. Yet it was hers every laugh, every tear, every second of disbelief that had led her here. The decor was simple, elegant, exactly what Susan would have chosen. Cascades of white roses framed the room, their fragrance soft but steady, and candles flickered gently along mirror tables. A quartet played in the corner, their music delicate and intimate, weaving through the hum of conversation. Joel's world, the world of grandeur and excess, had never felt this grounded, this human. And it wasn't because of the money spent, but because of the heart behind it. Susan's gown was modest yet breathtaking, an ivory creation that draped with understated grace. Her hair fell in soft curls, and the tiny pearl earrings she wore had belonged to her mother, the only heirloom she'd ever had. Joel, in his tailored black suit, couldn't take his eyes off her. Even when people approached to congratulate them, his gaze always drifted back to her as though she was the center of gravity itself. Zuri, in a lavender dress that made her look like a flower come to life, danced in small circles near the stage, clutching a bouquet almost too big for her hands. Her laughter rippled through the crowd, light and full of wonder. "Mommy's a princess tonight," she squealed, spinning until her curls framed her face like a halo. Laughter followed her words, warm, genuine, contagious. For Joel's colleagues, men and women who had only known him as the formidable CEO, the visionary who built an empire from silicon and code, it was strange and beautiful to see him like this. His guarded air was gone, replaced by an unshakable peace. When the time came for him to speak, the sound of glasses being tapped filled the air. Joel lifted his champagne flute, his other hand still clasping Susan's. "There was a time," he began, voice low but steady, "when I thought success was measured in numbers. The higher the profit, the fuller my life would feel. But then I met Susan." He turned to her, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "She showed me that real wealth isn't counted, it's felt. It's kindness that costs nothing. In love that asks for nothing in return. And in the family, the one we choose and the one we build." A quiet murmur rippled through the crowd, followed by soft applause. Joel's gaze dropped to Zuri, whose face shone with admiration. "She taught me, too," he added gently. "That sometimes the smallest hands can hold the biggest lessons." The applause grew louder, some guests discreetly brushing away tears. Susan leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "You'll make me cry in front of everyone." Joel smiled, his thumb brushing against her hand. "Then let them see what real love looks like." When the music shifted to a waltz, Joel pulled her close. The noise of the crowd faded, the lights dimmed, and for a few perfect minutes, the world belonged only to them. Susan's cheek rested against his shoulder, and she could feel his heartbeat strong, steady, real. "I still can't believe this," she murmured. "It's real," he whispered back. "Every second of it. This is our forever starting." As they moved together in quiet rhythm, Zuri spun circles around them, her laughter rising above the music like a melody of its own. In that moment, the scene, the light, the joy, the small girl's giggle was everything Joel had been searching for since the day he walked away from his company and sat on that curb outside the bakery. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was better, it was proof that love, when honest and earned, could rebuild what life had once stripped away. Later, when the guests began to drift home and the orchestra played its final notes, Susan stepped onto the terrace overlooking the city. The skyline stretched before her, the same city where she had once counted coins at the diner, wondering if she could afford one more week of groceries. Now it shimmered like a field of stars. Joel joined her quietly, slipping his arm around her waist. They stood in silence, the hum of laughter from inside fading into the night. "Have you ever thought about that night outside the bakery?" she asked softly. Joel chuckled under his breath. "Every day. I almost didn't stop," she said, smiling faintly. "I told myself I couldn't afford kindness. And yet you gave it anyway," he murmured. "And it changed everything." Susan turned her head to look at him. "You think fate had something to do with it?" Joel shook his head slowly. "Maybe not fate. Maybe just courage yours." She smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. Behind them, Zuri's voice called out through the glass doors. "Mommy! Uncle Eli! Come dance again." Joel grinned. "Guess we're being summoned." They returned inside, where the remaining guests were laughing and clapping as Zuri took center stage, showing off a series of twirls that ended in a dramatic bow. The sight made Susan laugh, her heart swelling with gratitude so profound it almost hurt. Joel lifted Zuri into his arms, spinning her around until she squealed with joy. Susan watched them, her chest tightening with love. The man she once thought a stranger had become her anchor. And the child who once only knew struggle now lived in a world filled with laughter and warmth. When the night finally wound down, and the last of the guests departed, the three of them stood together under the ballroom's chandeliers, their reflections shimmering in the polished floor. It wasn't a picture of perfection, there had been too much heartbreak, too many scars for that. But it was a picture of truth. A man who had once had everything and found meaning only when he lost it. A woman who had once had nothing but strength and found love when she least expected it. And a little girl who had unknowingly brought two souls home. Outside, the city lights flickered like blessings scattered across the dark. And in that glow, their story, the one that began on a rain-soaked curb with a sandwich and a spark of kindness, had found its ending, or perhaps its beginning. The sea stretched endlessly beyond the cliffs, calm and silver under the early morning sun. Waves brushed against the rocks below, soft as whispers, while gulls drifted lazily overhead. The cottage they now called home sat a few steps from the edge, a simple white house with blue shutters, surrounded by wildflowers and the scent of salt. It was far from the city, far from boardrooms and bright lights, but it was where life had finally slowed into something real. Susan stood by the kitchen window, her hair still tousled from sleep, a cup of coffee warming her hands. Through the glass, she watched Joel and Zuri in the garden. He was teaching her how to fly a kite, or at least trying to. The kite dipped and tangled with every gust of wind, and each time it fell, Zuri's laughter rang out, bright and unbroken. "You're pulling too hard," Joel said, his voice carried by the breeze. "No, you're letting go too soon," Zuri shouted back, her tone equal parts frustration and delight. Susan smiled to herself. This was their rhythm now: laughter, play, small imperfections stitched together by love. The woman who once measured joy in minutes between shifts now measured it in mornings like these. She stepped outside, the air cool against her skin. "Need some help, pilot?" she teased. Zuri turned, her curls bouncing. "Mommy, we almost got it this time." Joel gave Susan a mock look of despair. "Almost, meaning we've been defeated by the wind for 20 minutes. Maybe the wind just likes a challenge," she said, reaching for the string. Together, the three of them coaxed the kite higher until it finally caught the current. It rose into the sky, fluttering above the cliffs, its red tail flickering like a ribbon of fire. Zuri squealed, clapping her hands. Joel laughed, slipping his arm around Susan's waist. "Told you she'd outsmart me someday." "She already has," Susan said softly, her gaze on the sky. They stood there for a long moment, the world quiet except for the sea and the distant call of gulls. Behind them, the cottage door creaked in the wind, and inside, a half-finished painting rested on an easel, Susan's latest project. She had begun painting again, something she hadn't done since college. Joel had turned the spare room into a small studio for her, complete with tall windows and sunlight that pooled like gold on the floor. It wasn't about money anymore. The empire Joel once ran now operated under new leadership, his name still spoken with respect but no longer burdened with expectation. He had invested in smaller ventures, a local school library, a community kitchen, a foundation for single parents trying to rebuild their lives. Not charity, he always said, just chances. Zuri ran back toward them, her cheeks flushed, her laughter bubbling. "Mommy! Daddy! Look how high it is." Susan caught the word before it fully settled. Daddy. It wasn't the first time she'd said it, but every time, it hit like sunlight after rain. Joel's expression softened. He knelt down, meeting her eyes. "You did that all by yourself, you know." "I know," Zuri said, grinning proudly. "But you helped a little." Susan watched them, her heart full in a way that no longer frightened her. For years, love had seemed like a luxury she couldn't afford, something fragile, fleeting. But now she understood, love wasn't what you stumbled into, it was what you built, brick by brick, with patience, forgiveness, and faith. That night, after Zuri had fallen asleep clutching her stuffed bear, Susan and Joel sat on the porch beneath a blanket. The stars glimmered above them, scattered like memories too beautiful to forget. "Do you ever miss it?" Susan asked quietly. "The noise, the chaos, the rush of the city?" Joel thought for a moment, his thumb tracing idle circles on her hand. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I think I mistook noise for purpose." This, he nodded toward the sleeping house, the soft hum of waves beyond, "This is what purpose feels like." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You sound like a man who's finally figured out life." He smiled faintly. "Maybe just a man who finally stopped running from it." They sat in silence, the kind that didn't need